Well, good evening, YouTube. This is Chuck. And I'm coming to you from over by one of the parks today. And it's Wednesday, July 19th. It's just after sundown. It's been a hot day today. I tried to film this earlier, but the light was just too harsh. So I thought I'd try to come over this evening. And I want to tell you a little bit about my old truck here. So let's walk over here. When I was getting ready to buy something, I wasn't looking at it for a truck like this. I was actually looking for something to build into a rat rod. I had a cookie jar money I was saving up, and so I looking to possibly build something pretty outrageous. Well, when this thing came along, I'm going to come over here and sit down in my chair for a little bit here so I can talk to you better. Got a different chair tonight. I don't know how well this is going to work. I don't know how well the light's going to work. But when I was looking for something to build into something pretty radical, and I was looking for something kind of beat up. I wanted something that run well, but I didn't particularly care what it looked like, and I was trying to use my imagination, and so I was kind of looking for something. Well, this truck came up for sale, and there was a radio program that runs for about an hour a day or so. It's called Trades and Sales. And the guy put up this truck on Trades and Sales. And I don't even usually listen to that, but I happened to be listening to it that day. And he was asking $1,400 for it. So I wasn't all that interested in it at the time, but I paid attention to it. Well, a couple days later, I was listening to the program again, and the guy came up and put the same truck on. This time he was asking $1,000 for it. So I thought, well, maybe I ought to call on that and see, maybe I'll go look at it. So I went ahead and called the guy. It turned out he only lived about a half a mile from me. And I went over and looked at the truck. And the first thing I was struck with was, how proportional it was, how good it looked. And I was kind of looking for something to make pretty radical. And so I was kind of looking that maybe I could lower this or slam it, as they call it, and do something interesting with it. And so I got to looking at it, and one of the first things I noticed, and I'm going to show you here, is this is an old city truck. And what that meant, I'm going to get up here so I can show you. What that meant is that right here, this is the old property sticker saying that it belonged to the town. When I saw that, I knew it had spent its whole life here. The other thing, and it's really hard to see, I don't know if I can pick it up on camera or not, but right across there, when the light hits it just right, you can still see where it says Public Works. I'm sitting back down again. You can still see where it says Public Works. And so I knew this is an old street department truck. And I'm sure I passed it 1,000 times over the years. But they were getting rid of it, and I thought, well, I know the history of it. I know it's been here its whole life. And so that kind of piqued my interest. And the overall look of it, it looked okay. And so anyway, so I started talking to the guy, and he started telling me that he was a handyman, and he was selling it because he had too many tools to carry around, and he replaced it with a box truck so he could carry everything inside. And that was kind of what he was telling me. And so looking at the truck, I realized that it had absolutely no rust on it. The body was straight. I couldn't see any evidence that it had ever been hit or been wrecked in any way. And looking under the hood, it had a new radiator, and it looked like it had the air conditioning had just been worked on. So it didn't run very good. It ran, but it didn't run very good. But so I kind of just threw out. I asked the guy, I said, well, you're asking $1,000 for it. Will you take $900 in 30 minutes in cash? And he said, yeah, he would. So I run over to the bank, and I got 9 $100 bills, and I come back and I bought it. And I figured, if nothing else, the body's straight. If nothing else, the utility bed's probably worth $1,500. And so I brought it home, and at first I just drove it the way it was. And one of the first things I noticed about it, besides the fact it didn't run very good, is it leaked everything. it leaked oil, it leaked power steering, it leaked transmission fluid, it leaked coolant, it leaked everything. I couldn't even park it on my concrete driveway because to spot the driveway all up, I had to park it in the dirt. So that didn't faze me much. I figured, well, sooner or later, if I decide I like it, I can figure out a way to address all that stuff. And so my first while was to drive it on do it on the cheap. And so I ended up just driving it the way it was. And I drove it the way it was for like 5 years. Now the coolant leak, when I started trying to investigate where that came from, my first thought was probably a water pump, and it turned out it wasn't the water pump. It was actually coming out on the left side, the driver's side, the front of the head, between the head and the block. Well, that's an indicator of a head gasket, which means it probably got overheated at some point in time, which is probably why you put a new radiator in it. The interesting thing about that is normally when a head gasket blows, normally you're going to get coolant in the oil or oil in the coolant or something of that nature, which makes, you pull the dipstick out and it looks like a milkshake. But this didn't have any of that. But it was, you could see it where it was pushing the coolant out between the front of the head and the block. I can't really show it to you on the motor because the air conditioning compressor's in the way, so it's kind of hard to see. So anyway, I just had to watch the vitals on it real close, but in trying to figure out what was wrong with why it didn't run very well, I drove it the way it was for about 5 years, and then finally the coolant leak got bad enough it was leaving a puddle everywhere it went, and so I parked it. And after I parked it, I was going through a medical issue at the time, and I talked about that in another video. If you're interested in that, back when I first started the channel, one of my first videos was I talked about beating diabetes. So you can go on the channel and type in beating diabetes and it'll take you to that video. But that's a whole nother story and we don't have time to talk about that here. But what it meant was I had absolutely no energy. I didn't want to fix it. I didn't want to do it. I was just not feeling good. I was not up to my old self. And so when the thing got leaking coolant bad enough, I just parked it. Well then, as I've told you in other videos, along came COVID. And in the meantime, in 2019, I figured out what was wrong with me and I addressed it. And that's the whole beating diabetes thing again. So by the time the first part of 2020 came around and COVID came along, and we were all hiding from each other, and I got a noisy truck going by, sorry about that. So we're all hiding from each other and trying to socially distance, and I was looking for a COVID project, keep myself busy. So I decided that, hey, maybe it's time to fix the old truck. I had my energy level was back, I'd lost 70 pounds. I was feeling 1,000% better than I did a year prior. And so I went ahead and tore the old truck apart. I've told you about that before. Tore the old truck apart, fixed it, and put it back together. Well, when I pulled the heads off it, it was showing 150 some thousand miles on the clock. I pulled the heads off it, and the short block looked fine. There wasn't even any ring ridge you could catch your fingernails on. I had to send the heads down and have them done to a machine shop because there's an issue with these Windsor engines, and that is that the front two bolts on the intake manifold go into the water jacket, and they're small bolts, and you almost always twist them off. And you got to take it to a machine shop to have them remove it, unless you're a whole lot better at that kind of stuff than I am. So, I twisted off a couple of the exhaust manifold bolts on the passenger side as well, and I'll get back to that here in a minute. But anyway, so I took them down. There's no machine shop here in town anymore. The closest one's 75 miles away, so that's a 150-mile round trip to drop them off and a 150-mile round trip to pick them up. So it's 300 miles to do that. So anyway, got it done. Heads are in good shape. Block's in good shape. Put the motor back together, re-gasketed everything, take care of the oil leaks. And while the heads were gone and stuff, I started looking at all the other leaks that it had. Well, most of them turned out to be something pretty minor. I don't know why in the world the city mechanics didn't fix it. But the power steering leak was a return line that had just gotten brittle over time and split. and it was just a regular rubber hose, just had to replace it. The same thing with the transmission leak was, it was nothing more than a line going to the transmission cooler, the return line to the transmission cooler. The same thing. It got old and brittle and split and was leaking. When I regasketed the engine, that took care of the engine oil leaks. And so anyway, the other part about it was the bottom had been coated with so much oil and driven on dirt roads, so it was crusted with like mud, oily mud. And so I dealt with that issue, scraping it all off. And so I got the whole thing back together, and but it still didn't want to run right. So in the process of not wanting to run right, there's another diesel truck. In the process of not wanting to run right, it was fuel fouling plugs. And when it was fuel fouling plugs, it seemed like the number 4, which is the back cylinder on the passenger side, would be the one that would fuel foul first. And I got a guy parking a diesel over here. Hopefully he'll shut it off here in a minute. But anyway, so I was having to pull the plugs out every so often and clean them. And the other thing was when I get it out on the road, on the highway, at highway speed, oh my God, it didn't have any power at all. It wasn't quite as bad running around town. So it didn't want to run at low speed, didn't want to run at high speed. Well, that running codes on it, I bought a code reader and running codes on it, and this is what they call an OBD1 system. So it's not quite as sophisticated as the modern ones. But I was trying to chase down the codes. There we go, the guy shut his diesel off. I was trying to chase down the codes, and I kept coming up with a code for a temperature sensor. So I replaced the temperature sensor. Then I was having another code for another sensor. So I was going to take it over to a shop, and I was going to have the diagnostics done on it. When I'm doing my research on it, for what it would cost to take it over to the shop and pay the guy to put it on his computer and figure out which sensor is bad, I could replace every sensor in the whole motor. So I did that. I just replaced them all. It still run bad. So in doing my research on University of YouTube, I found out that when the computer goes bad, when a particular capacitor burns out, it gives you a temperature sensor code, but that's not really what the problem is. That's just what the computer tells you. So on this video I watched, the guy said, this is how, pull your computer out, take the cover off, and this is the capacitor that's doing that kind of stuff, and this is how to look and check and see if your capacitors are burned out. So I did that. Well, by golly, I took the cover off of it, and the capacitor that was burned out in my computer was the exact same one that he showed on the video. And that was the picture I showed on my community page this morning. So that was a big shockaroo. The other codes I kept getting emissions codes. Now, this truck, I mentioned it in another video, but this is a 92, and the 92, their emission system was extremely complicated, and it was failure prone and troublesome and hard to fix, and so a lot of the guys on YouTube, what they were doing what they called emissions deletes. So finally I was trying to fix it initially, and then finally I got tired of doing that, and I thought, well, I'll just take the whole dang thing off. It doesn't need it. It's old enough, it doesn't require emissions testing. My county doesn't require emissions testing anyway, and so I'll just get rid of it. So I started, while I had the motor apart, I started taking all the emissions stuff off of it. And studying up on it, figuring out what I could remove and what I couldn't. The emission system had about 1.5 miles of vacuum lines, and they're all plastic, and they're all brittle as soda straws. Actually, it reminded me a lot of spaghetti before you raw spaghetti. I mean, you just touch it and it breaks. And so I got rid of all that, studied up what I had to have and what I didn't have to have. Well, finally, I went ahead to the computer thing. When I figured that out, I went ahead and I ordered a remanufactured computer, and that was about $200. And so the computer came in, and it was good. I had to send the old one back because you can't buy new ones anymore, and if you did, they'd be too expensive. But anyway, so I got the computer fixed. I had all new sensors on the thing, and I got to the point where it was running pretty good but when I took it out on the highway, it was doggy. Well, one of the other things I'd done is in crawling around underneath it and trying to figure out what the heck's going on, I noticed that where the header pipe, where it's fastened onto the exhaust manifold on the right side, had been leaking. And it actually had been squirting hot exhaust out right on the starter. Now, this actually happened a little bit ago. I should have talked about that before I got there, so let's back up just a little bit. But and it actually gotten to the point where it melted the insulation off of the wires going to the solenoid. Man, that's not good. So I was trying to fix all that, and when I reached up to try to work on the solenoid broke apart in my hand. Now, I'd driven it that day. It started and ran that day, but that bakelite part of that solenoid broke in my hand. So I put a new solenoid on it, and I tried figuring out how to tighten up the manifold, and I thought there was a gasket in it, and there really isn't. There's just like a cone-shaped thing, but the bolts are bad. And anyway, so what that told me that there's possibly some kind of an exhaust restriction. So now fast forward back up again, where I'm hooking this stuff all back up after I put the motor back in it, got it running, and the exhaust is still acting like it acts like it's got an exhaust restriction. Now you couldn't feel that putting your hand over the tailpipe. I hope I still have enough light because it's getting late. But when you put your hand over the tailpipe, it felt like there's plenty of exhaust coming through there. But there was obviously something going on in there. So what I did is I disconnected the catalytic converter and opened up the header pipe. I took it out and drove it. Noisier than hell, but by golly, it woke up. And I could take it and drive it down the highway 65, 70 mile an hour, no problem. That told me I had an exhaust restriction. So I figured out a way to get to looking in there. And in the meantime, as part of changing this stuff all out, I'd replaced the oxygen sensor, which is down there. And the old oxygen sensor looked like it had been burned to a crisp. Well, when I finally figured out a way that I could look up inside that catalytic converter, I noticed it looked like a big melted mess in there. And what happened was they got catalyst packs in there, and there's 4 of them in that particular converter, and it had gotten so hot in there that it had melted the catalyst pack. So the proper way to fix that, of course, is to replace the catalytic converter, but I'm a cheap son of a gun, and I don't want to do that. And once again, I'm removing the emissions on it, not fixing them. So I was trying to figure out a way to get rid of that thing. Well, at first I managed to knock it loose in there and lay it down on its side. And that would allow the exhaust to flow around it. And I took it out and drove it on the highway, and it worked. But somewhere along the line, the exhaust flowing through there picked it up again and slapped it back up into place and blocked it again. Well, so I had to pull the damn thing apart again. Well, that time I was able to reach down in there with an edged pry bar. And I found out that if I beat on it, I could actually break that catalyst up. And so I broke it up into chunks, small enough that I could actually dump it out of there. It was quite a challenge to do that. It took me a while. And but I got it busted up, and there was 3 more catalyst packs still in there, and they were still in place. So I put it back on there, and I've been driving it that way, and it's fine. It runs fine. Well, and recently I ran into that electrical problem again, and I was wondering what kind of problem it could possibly be, and it turned out to be a bad battery. So the truck's running fine now. But what I theorized happened, and of course I have no way of knowing what came first, whether the original thing was that capacitor in the computer, but something happened initially, and it became a cascade, like a dominoes effect. And what it was doing is it was giving the computer a wrong temperature reading, so it was telling the computer that the engine was cold all the time. So that was making it run rich. When it was making it run rich, it did a couple things. Number one, it was fuel fouling the plugs, which was my spark plug issue. And the other thing it was doing, it was running enough raw fuel, unburned fuel, down in the catalytic converter that it got the catalytic converter so hot that it burned up the oxygen sensor, and it also melted that catalyst pack in the catalytic converter. So the whole thing all came together, and it took me quite a while to figure it all out. But once I figured it all out and fixed the stuff I had to fix and wrecked the stuff I had to wreck, and that truck's leaving now. But once I did all that, then I finally got the problem solved. Now, the old truck is not perfect, but it runs pretty darn good now. It'll get out on the highway and go as fast as I care to drive it. I still got issues. As I mentioned in the last video, the 411 video, it needs tires and I need to redo the front brakes. I need to check the back brakes. But I figured you'd kind of be interested in that little story. I was last night I had a little back and forth on comments with a subscriber and who has a muffler shop, and I think he'd probably get a kick out of that because he's probably run into this kind of stuff before. But for an old shade tree like me, it took me quite a while to figure it out. And as I've said before, if this truck and my van both, if I'd had to take them to a garage and had all the work done on them, it probably broke me because it cost a lot of money. But it's a hobby project, and it gives me something to do, keep my mind occupied. And I've been fiddling with cars my whole life, so I'm running out of light now. I think I got enough to finish this. So I think for right now, I'm just going to tell you to take care of each other and love each other. That's a little story, a little more story about my old truck. And I'll get back with you again on another one. I've been trying to do this one now for a couple of days. I went out earlier today, but I couldn't find a place that felt comfortable, and the lighting was awful harsh. And I got another one about a similar thing that happened to me years ago, and I might shoot that in the man cave tonight because it happened so long ago. There's no setting to put to it. So for right now, I'm going to close this one out, and I'll tell you, I'll be back again with another one real soon. Let me spin this around. I'm actually sitting over here by the swimming pool. They closed the swimming pool a few years ago. They're going to tear it down and build a new one. But right now, it's just sort of sitting here derelict. And as you can see, the sun's gone down. And we'll see how well this thing showed. But for right now, I'll just tell you until I talk to you again. I'll catch you on the next one, and I'll just say for now, peace out.